Hello and welcome again to my channel. I'm Quick Van Adafon, or QBA, and today I will be talking about, if you haven't guessed by the hat, the Professor Layton series. So, Professor Layton is a dapper English gentleman who works in the archaeology department at the fictional Gressenheller University, and he never actually does any archaeology. Instead, he just spends his time running around with a young boy solving puzzles. That would sum up the series pretty well. But I'm not going to leave it there. I love the Professor Layton games. I've always loved solving puzzles, and the Professor Layton games have tons of puzzles. Um, that being said, the latest game has left me somewhat disappointed. Professor Layton and The Last Spectre, its puzzles aren't quite as good. The twist is not quite as good. It's just not up to par with the original trilogy. So I'm going to leave that one to the side for now because I don't want to talk about something else that has disappointed me. So, leaving that one aside, I'm going to talk about the primary trilogy that consists of Curious Village, Diabolical Box, and Unwound Future. So, in these ones, Professor Layton and his assistant, Luke Triton, go to these various towns. In the first one, it's the aforementioned Curious Village, where he has to solve puzzles and find this treasure or something. And it's the one game that really kind of defines the whole Professor Layton series. In the end, it turns out the entire village is actually made up of robots who give puzzles to everybody who enters the village to see if someone is smart enough and capable enough to look after this guy's daughter who he left there after he died, or something. I don't really care a whole lot. I just played it for the puzzles. So it kind of encapsulates the whole Professor Layton kind of idea. He's this very, very English gentleman. He wears a fine top hat, and he has this incredible reluctance to take it off, to the point where even his car is special made so that it can contain his hat. It's fun. Professor Layton builds a hang glider out of bits and pieces he finds around a room, and then he escapes from a tall tower and solves a bunch of puzzles. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's a fun game if you like puzzles. Which brings us to Diabolical Box. Now, yeah, as I said, the Professor Layton games kind of revolve around Professor Layton coming up with some flimsy excuse to go somewhere to do absolutely no archaeology like you'd think his job would entail, solve a bunch of puzzles, and then there's some really random twist in the story, and then there's one, less major puzzle, and then you unlock a bunch of extra puzzles. In Diabolical Box, he comes across the Diabolical Box, and apparently it kills people when you open it, and it's killed his mentor. So he heads off to this town where it supposedly came from in order to solve the mystery of the Diabolical Box. The twist, it turns out, is that no, it doesn't actually kill people. The metal that it's made out of actually releases a gas, which makes you very, very susceptible to what you believe. So people believe that they would die when they open it. But since it couldn't actually kill you, it just caused you to become knocked unconscious for a very long time, and the previous people who opened it were all buried alive. Which is kind of dark, but they managed to save his mentor, who's actually unconscious. But that's not really the whole twist. After Layton sword fights some dude, which is awesome, because it's Professor Layton sword fighting a dude, it turns out that the twist is the town they actually visited didn't exist. They were high the entire time. And I'm serious, that's actually how it ends. Professor Layton just says, there was no village, we were hallucinating the whole thing. So yeah, Diabolical Box, they were high the entire time. I laughed for like 5 minutes straight. It was the first time I've been high an entire video game as a character before. And lastly, we have Professor Layton and the Unwound Future, which is my favorite game in the series. I'm going to tell you right now, the twist is the Prime Minister of London gets kidnapped, and so that's some time travel exhibition thing, and shortly afterwards, Professor Layton gets a letter from Luke, his apprentice, but from 10 years in the future, telling him to go to some clock shop or something. So young Luke and Layton head to this clock shop, and they get transported to future London, and they solve puzzles there, and they solve puzzles in the present. They solve a whole bunch of puzzles, and eventually it turns out that no, time travel doesn't exist. They were just underground in some giant cavern beneath London, where the villain has built a giant mechanical spider to attack London for some reason. Except once you're done that, it turns out that time travel actually is real, because one of the characters you've encountered was Professor Layton's girlfriend in the past, but she disappeared in some time travel incident there, and that caused her to end up in the present fake time travel cave beneath London before being transported back to just before an explosion happened and she dies. Yeah. But that's not why I love Professor Layton and the Unwound Future. I love Professor Layton and the Unwound Future for one main reason. Puzzle battles. You actually battle other characters in the game with puzzles. It is the single most ridiculous thing they could have done with puzzles in the entire series. And this is a series where people will give you a puzzle with the flimsiest excuse. It's like, oh, I see you like that sign. Hey, that reminds me of a puzzle. Here, solve this one. Or, hey, how about that cat? That reminds me of a puzzle. Or just for some reason, hey, here's a puzzle. Puzzles everywhere. But no, they actually fight it out with puzzles. In one of them, Professor Layton builds a machine gun out of a slot machine. It was awesome. So, yeah, that's really the Professor Layton series in a nutshell. Go to some random town as an archaeologist. Don't do any archaeology. Everybody gives you puzzles for an ill-defined reason. You solve a bunch of puzzles. You have some random twist. You solve one last puzzle, and then you unlock a whole bunch more puzzles. I love it because I love puzzles. And, well, I don't care if you like it because I'm talking about Professor Layton. He wears an awesome top hat, and he drinks a lot of tea because he's very English. Professor Layton's theme is awesome. The music in the series is fantastic. Yeah, that's really all I have to say about Professor Layton. So that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I'm sure you'll let me know. If you liked my top hat, let me know. If you didn't, I'm sure I'll hear about that too. So, have a good night and enjoy any puzzles you may come across. Because as we all know, a true gentleman leaves no puzzle unsolved. Night.